Hello and welcome to Barely Hoops, Ball in Europe's podcast that is just about basketball. I'm Emmett Ryan, and today, well, it's a bit different because I say it's just about basketball, and we're truly fitting that bill with this episode because my guest today is Julie Souza. Now, Julie Souza is the most senior person in AWS, as Amazon Web Services, for those of you who don't know, when it comes to sports and technology. And AWS has just recently announced a big partnership with the NBA. You may be aware the NBA season's underway as the last week or so by the time we're listening to this. But yeah, a huge amount of work being done there. Now, getting, I guess, this big, this relevant when it comes to sort of, giant multi-billion dollar companies and actually multi-hundreds of billions of dollars companies when you're talking about something as part of this, obviously, is not, the most normal thing for us. It's great, we love it, but it does lead to some interesting circumstances as to how and where you find them. And I couldn't have asked for a more ridiculously fun way to end up meeting Julie Souza, and that was at the NFL game that was in Dublin in September, where the Pittsburgh Steelers played the Minnesota Vikings. So we are about to jump now to me and Julie Souza in Croke Park, just before kickoff of an NFL game in Dublin. It was wild for me. We will be talking about what they do with the NFL, but moreover, we'll be going deep into what they do in the NBA and really about this data sort of surge. People say revolution. For me, it's just this comical, overwhelming, enormous surge of data into sports and crucially, how we make sense of it. So we're going to now make the big jump. Right now, talking to you here, I'm in my apartment, but we're now going to go back in time to me in Croke Park with Julie Souza. So, Julie, obviously I've spoken to you a few times before, but first time for this show, so thanks for joining us on Barely Hoops. But I've got to ask you, why am I talking to you now?
Because we're in Dublin with the NFL. First time to have an NFL game in Ireland. Really excited to be here with them.
That's great. Now, an awful lot of people are going to be kind of going, right, NFL we get. Is AWS just putting their label on, or what's the actual activity? Like, I'm going to ask you a few basketball things in a minute, don't worry, but we'll start off with the NFL. So why does AWS even want to be involved in sports?
I think sports is a really powerful storytelling vehicle, and especially to convey really pretty complex technical workflows and stories through sport. And so we're here today because we work with the league on next-gen stats, which is all of their great data and analytics, player health and safety, officiating use cases. There are tons of work that we're doing in the NFL that all involves data and generative AI and some really exciting technologies. So no, it's not just a logo slap for us. It actually has to be really compelling stories that we're telling, and NFL's right there at the front lines trying to push the envelope. So it's exciting to work with them.
And so one thing I would like to ask about this, because I've been covering sports tech for a very long time, back at a time when there was a lot more, shall we say, resistance to the use of tech in sports. So I know you've got a bit of experience in this. So what do you feel is different with the conversations you all in AWS have now versus what you might have had to have quite a lot longer ago?
That's a great question, because I think you're right. There was this, we know in our gut, certain things that we don't need data, we don't need technology to tell us. I think that's no longer the case. I think people understand there's real value in bringing data to the forefront and using it in ways to make the game safer, to engage fans, to identify new audiences. So I think there's seeing real value there. And so yes, you still have resistance at times, but I think it's a much more open environment now in sports and receptivity to data and technology.
And I'm guessing that open environment as well has them asking more questions, giving you more ideas as to what you can do.
Well, 100%. I always say that we're only limited by our questions, right? And humans are very curious, so it's a good thing for us. And everything from how do you make the game safer to how do we make officiating as objective as possible and definitive as possible to, hey, how do we use this data to teach Dublin about American football, right?
Okay, so let's go with that last bit for an example, because obviously we're here for an NFL game, even though this is technically a basketball podcast, but only just about. So how are you using what you do to teach Dublin about American football?
Well, the National Football League has next-gen stats, which is their set of analytics that help fans understand the game a little bit better. So the league is collecting 500 million points of data per season. And those are off of sensors on the players, both in the shoulder pads and in the ball. They're collecting, I think it's 24 times a second. They're collecting data off the ball 12 times a second per player. And so all of that data is informing these analytics that help fans understand the game, and it helps coaches understand the game, and broadcasters convey, hey, this is what's really important here. They're going to go for it on fourth down because the probability is really high that they'll make it, or these players are the tackle probability of a particular play. Now, I think I always say that there's a lot of science behind this, but the art is in the storytelling here. So it's really important that those that are using this data and talking about this data are doing it in a way that brings fans in and not alienating them.
That's one of the things, is the storytelling, it's not just for the fans, it's also for the teams who are using it, and the NFL head office who are using it. So, like, because I'm, anybody who listens to this show knows I'm a tech journalist a long time. The hardest part, and like one of the things I always ask people, is explain what you do to my mother. So you've basically got to be thinking with the same way, I'm guessing, when it comes to this, because you're collecting a hilariously large amount of data. Like, this is just, like, it's, when people are hearing the numbers you've been saying, they're just kind of going, right, okay, Jolie, and how do I work out what's important there? So how do you do that storytelling?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on who you are. You talked about coaches, for example. So part of it, and that's certainly a user group, it's understanding, hey, we are trying to prepare for our next opponent. What are their tendencies? How can we sort of battle those tendencies in the best possible way? If you are a broadcaster, you're trying to tell a story of, hey, this is why it's important to pay attention to this next play. But the data is also being used in other really creative ways, which is interesting. And we're talking about like the hard stats here, but at the same time, all of this underlying tracking technology can be used to turn the game into an animated broadcast, which the league has done several times. They had an entire game where they replaced the players with characters from The Simpsons.
Yeah, that was surreal, by the way.
Right?
Like, we were very upset we didn't get the full of that on this side of the Atlantic. It was like US only. We were seeing the clips and it's kind of going, okie dokie, right? I was like, we're checking. That is tea in my cup, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And they're not the only one. I mean, the National Hockey League in the U.S. also did another Disney program where they did an entire ice hockey game leveraging animated characters from another program. And so that's a way of bringing a younger audience into the game too. So we think about these really heady use cases for the data, but there's really entertaining and creative ways of using the data too.
Now, I'm going to ask about basketball in a minute, but I want to talk about the broader AWS sports tech thing, because obviously one of the more recent times we spoke was to do with F1. That was great. But it's like, you've got such a variety of the sports to do, because obviously F1 is a very different sport to NFL, which is a very different sport to the NBA, which is a very different sport to, say, cricket or baseball. So, but I'm guessing there are learnings in the work y'all do that impacts each of those, if that makes sense. Like, across the board, like they interrelate in some way.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, it's coming down to making sense of large volumes of data, right? And that's a common theme for a lot of these. And we talked before, F1, you think NFL's got a lot of data, and F1's 1.1 million points of data per second off of those cars, right? So that's
off each car as well, isn't it?
Off each car, 1.1 million points of data per second. Like, it's a crazy amount of data. So this is absolutely a job for compute and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so I think what's exciting is to see sort of the evolution of that. First, it's gathering all the data, it's making sense of the data. And then there's this other layer of like, how do we have the data be more accessible? And so we're starting to see properties like F1, like the National Football League, put generative AI tools on top of the data so that it's accessible by their broadcast partners, by their marketing teams, by fans as well, so that they can ask, sort of query the data in natural language and not have to physically write a code query, right? So I think it's surfacing all this data to different constituencies, leveraging technology as it evolves. So that's pretty exciting.
I'm just really hoping the audio was picking up the brass band playing Firework by Katy Perry there. So I'm going to switch you to basketball for a bit, but we will be coming back to football at the end, don't worry. So I know, obviously, when we're talking, it's before, but thankfully this is coming out afterwards. So October the 1st, big announcement with the NBA. Tell us what is now what it is all about, and what I will be saying when this comes out, what it was all about, so to speak.
Yes, so we are very excited to partner with the National Basketball Association and all of their properties, including the WNBA, which is very popular as well. It's a very similar sort of mindset that we have in terms of innovation and wanting to sort of push the envelope in that space. They've always been a historically innovative league. So we'll be partnering with them, and much like we're talking about next gen stats here at the NFL, NBA will be launching a series of statistics and analytics with them as well to help drive engagement and edification around the game of basketball. We've got some great generative AI use cases in the works, and again, tools to help surface content and data in a way that will be really compelling to all members of their ecosystem.
Well, let's talk about a few of the different stakeholders and how you might be able to help them, because obviously you're still working it out. We'll start off with the easy one. So with the fans, are going to see something similar to the NFL Next Gen, or what's the plan?
Yeah, exactly. So looking at those sorts of analytics too, and we're in the fun part of like ideating like those. What are the things we sort of know to be true about basketball, but can we prove them, right? And then how do we get into predictive analytics? Like what's the expected expected field goal percentage of a particular play, and to see that come to light. And what's really great about this stuff is I think the analytics are interesting in highlighting the exceptionalism of these athletes, because we can sit there and say, well, there was a 14% chance of him making that shot and he nailed it. Like, wow, right? So I think it's contextualizing what we're watching. I think that's what the data is going to help us do too. So certainly a next gen stats sort of equivalent to the NBA and the WNBA, which is very exciting to me, is sort of having parity with the women's league and bringing that data to their game as well. I think will be exciting.
And that's obviously because the WNBA, it's a growing league in terms of interest, fandom, all that. Like, it's an area where I'm guessing you could see a sort of a nice sort of playbook for you for other women's sports as well.
100%, and I like that idea of sort of up leveling and getting parity there. And I'd like to compare Caitlin Clark to Steph Curry and show where she might be outshining him a little bit, right? So no, I think it is a really good opportunity to sort of show other leagues around the world, the power of women's sport as well through the W.
Well, it's not relevant to this interview, but I'm sure a lot of the listeners are going, well, Sabrina's shoes are amongst the most popular amongst actual NBA players. So that's one that, is known, I would say, by about, say, a third of the people listening, and the other 2/3 are going, really? Goes, yeah, no, really popular Sabrina Ionesco's shoes with some of the top players. Oh, she's great, yeah. So I suppose that's the fandom side of things. What about sort of because like you mentioned, obviously, with the NFL, I'm going to ask you about this a bit later as well with them, the health side of things, because obviously predicting injuries, or more accurately, predicting what might cause an injury is so crucial in a sport like basketball, where non-contact injuries are always being highlighted. So I'm guessing that's an area you're going to be looking at using your data.
Yeah, I think we'll look into that as well. I mean, they're collecting, they've got optical tracking, camera-based tracking, and they're collecting about 29 points on the human body in the course of that optical tracking. And so it'll absolutely be used to look at things like player health and safety, and how is it different from female players to male players. I think a lot of the data and player health and safety across the board, across any sport, is primarily done on male athletes. So I hope there might be an opportunity to work with the WNBA to focus on some female athlete player health and safety use cases too, but we're certainly talking about all of that.
And like but it's interesting you mentioned the female athlete difference, because I know, like speaking about Arico in Ireland, who do an awful lot of that with their fitter woman side of things, they've sort of been on this journey. Like, they started out reasonably early focusing on this, but like for them it's sort of building up that expertise and realizing just how much of there's a potential market, not just in terms of sales, but also in terms of the variance in data. Basically, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah. I was reading an article recently. It was, complete non sequitur, but it was, test case or crash test dummies in cars, right? They've done all of the safety mechanisms and checks and things like that for automobiles have been done on dummies that are the size of a male, right? And so women were getting disproportionately hurt in cars because, right? So it's a matter of just how do we look at this from a little different angle and make sure that we're not, having bias in how we're looking at some of these use cases.
If you ever listen to this show, you'll notice that non sequiturs are extremely welcome in what we do. So I suppose I'm going to go two more stakeholders. The second last one, it's like sort of the coaching and administrative staff. I'm guessing they're going to see huge potential in what you're doing.
Oh, 100%. Informing game strategy. If you stop and think about where some of these analytics first came to light, baseball was really out of the game, no pun intended, with sabermetrics and collecting data, and then forcing them to look at the game in a different way, right? I always say in the game of baseball, the measure of offensive prowess used to be batting average. Not until somebody started looking at the data did they realize, hey, it's actually whether or not you get on base is a bigger predictor of whether or not you can drive success for this team, and so therefore on base percentage became the de facto metric there. So I think it'll change how we look at what's important when we're scouting players and recruiting players, and also how we're preparing players.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned baseball there, because the last one I'm going to be asked about is the broadcasters, and baseball sort of sets the standard for online streaming in many respects globally. So I'm going to hazard a guess that what you're doing is also going to be a huge factor in sort of aiding the broadcast experience, be it like through web or through TV.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is obviously the vast adoption of streaming, right? And so we were somewhat limited historically by this linear distribution of content, where it was through television and you had to produce the least offensive broadcast for as many people as possible. Now with streaming, people can opt in. I want a data cast. I want an animated cast. And we want to be able to provide our broadcast talent with data that helps them really, add more texture to the story that they're telling. So I think 100% this data is going to show up in maybe some unexpected ways in content as well, but certainly broadcasters are part of that.
Well, I'm bringing you back to the NFL now. So for the basketball fans who are bored, as I deal with it, lads, because this is very interesting to me, because we're going to go to an area that affects a lot of sports, but NFL is probably most high profile for, because you mentioned sort of managing, head trauma related stuff. Like, so you're working in areas with your tech to basically help with the management of that. Is that right?
We're gathering the data and trying to identify, what are the plays that are more injurious. Like I mentioned, the kickoff rule changed because they were trying to bring down the concussion rate. It was a 4x concussion rate, and now with the rule changes that they implemented, the dynamic kickoff rule, they've lowered. It's a completely normalized play now. It's like no other. It's like every other pass and run play. We're coming off the last season with the lowest number of concussions in the NFL, and I can't overstate how proud I am to be part of that work in making the game safer.
This is interesting to me because obviously you all can see my face. Julie can, because she knows where my brain is going. This sounds awfully similar to how your tech helped in improving overtaking in F1. Was it the same line of thinking, was it?
Yeah. Oh, I love that story.
Yeah. Go ahead and tell it. Most people listening haven't heard
we'll
it.
tell that story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was great. So 300 sensors, 1.1 million points of data per second off those cars, and like we said, they obviously are using it to drive insights and game strategy and race strategy and whatnot, but also then the Formula One, used the data to redesign the car in 2022 because you had not very many overtakes, and so that's one of the most exciting parts of the sport, and that was because the way the car was designed, you had the super turbulent aerodynamic wake that made it hard for a follow car to pass. In redesigning the car, they had that wake go up over the car rather than into the car, and that season there were 30% more overtakes in motorsport. So it's a very, very good analogy.
Because when you're describing what the work you did on the concussion side of things, that sounds like very similar work. And again, like I was saying to you, these sort of approaches, like because they're solving two very, very different issues. I think it's easy for anyone to understand, but taking sort of similar science to it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, 100% it is. And what we're always starting with, though, is a problem we're trying to solve, right? Hey, we don't have this exciting element showing up as much as we want in motorsport. How do we solve that? Well, it's actually the way the car is designed. So how do we change, it's this root cause. How do we change the design to enable the outcome we want? In the game of football, we're seeing more injuries than we'd like, and we have a play that's not as dynamic as we'd like. So let's simulate some rule changes and just see if we can optimize for both of those things. And that's what's happening in football.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up with one basketball question that I will best describe as brutal, cruel, evil, and fundamental to an awful lot of our listeners. Because, as you may be aware, there's not much in the way of mid-range and long two-pointers anymore. So, can we hope that you can find a way to put value back in them so there's a bit more variety in shooting?
We'll see what the data tells us, Emmett. But yeah, that's a tough one, right? It sort of changed the game. Looking at the data. So I have no promises, but we'll see what we can find for you.
Well, so one of the things I'm thinking of when I'm asking that question is, because you mentioned the overtaking was crucial, like a dehomogenization of a sport is kind of a thing sports are always looking for. So is that one of the areas where you're thinking different teams might be able to find different use cases from your data? Yeah,
and then I wonder if, gosh, NBA don't hold me to this, but maybe they're going to start looking at their rules a little bit differently. Do we introduce a 4-point line? Do we change? I'm making things up. They're not going to like it if I say it, but they might get creative with how they change things too to add back some dynamicism, like you're referencing.
Brilliant. Now he's going to tell folks the game is very much about to start here. So I'm going to wrap up by asking Julie to tell us where we can learn far more about what you all are doing, particularly on the NBA side of things.
I would always go to aws.com/sport, and that you can see a lot of the stuff we're talking about on display there.
Fantastic. Julie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Emmett.
So that was me talking to Julie Souza in Croke Park ahead of the game that, of course, the Steelers won. I'm a lifelong Steelers fan, so woo, go Steelers. Steelers won against the Minnesota Vikings, but obviously some really fascinating even insights there. That is the first of 2 sports tech podcasts we're going to have for you back to back. We have another one coming out next week with a bunch of sports tech companies, which again will cross over from basketball to other sports and how they all do all the various stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this one with Julie Souza. This has been great, and looking forward to bringing you to the next one, which will be out next Monday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us wherever you listen to Barely Hoops. Please give us a big rating, a big review, say nice things about us. It helps us get in front of more eyeballs, which is the most crucial thing when it comes to a podcast, especially one as young as us. This is only our 6th ever episode. And so, yeah, thanks so much. If you want to keep following what we do, where we do it, Ball in Europe is the handle on all social media, with one exception, which is Instagram, where we're ballineurope.com. And of course, ballineurope.com is the website as well. Thanks very much, and I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Barely Hoops is a Ball in Europe production. Our theme music is Deep Feelings, licensed from Artlist.